wouldn't it be better if we could feel empowered around fear? If we could have the ability to be in the midst of fear and know that we have some tools and some ability to be able to be with ourselves in those times and not be so swept away by the fear. Hello, everyone. Today is our very first soul-led second half call. My name is Deb Blum, and I am a midlife awakening mentor, and I guide women on the journey from first half of life living, which in a nutshell is like fear-based, ego-led living. It's oftentimes autopilot. We're just doing what we feel pulled to do in any given moment, not necessarily bringing intentionality to our lives. And oftentimes it's coming from a place of our wounding from our childhood or societal conditioning, or even programming in our minds that we don't even know happened just by things our parents taught us or religion or whatever else was happening, maybe even our culture where we grew up. And so all of those things are oftentimes just driving the bus. And moving to a soul-led way of living means that we come from more intentionality. We intentionally look at those things and say, I don't want to be just driven by those things. I want to be in charge of my life. I want to be a person who is intentional and who chooses the things that we feel deep in our soul are really what we're here to do. And oftentimes it's not about doing per se. It's not necessarily about like what you physically do in the world. It's most of the time about who we are, how we be, how we show up, how we feel, how we connect with other people, the types of relationships that we have. And so I decided to do these calls because I wanted to be able to give people a glimpse of the contrast of the two. And then also, just to be clear, the Whole Soul Way program is the program that I guide women through, and or they can be guided through by going through the content in the program. And that is the bridge. It's the bridge, and then it's the lifelong living, but it's the bridge between the two, because learning how to unhook from fear and conditioning and all of this programming and all the ways that we've been living, maybe based on our wounding from our childhood, is actually a little bit of a journey. I wish it was like, I've decided I'm going to live soul-led living. Okay, that's what I would like it to be, but it's not. It takes a little bit of unraveling, unhooking, unwinding. And it's usually less about learning a new way of being as getting rid of all the clutter that makes us live the ways that we are, that don't feel authentic, that don't feel really true to ourselves, that we feel like we're living another person's life or we're dependent on other people's validation or conditioning. What would it be like to just feel so good inside? Like you feel like you rest in your worth and that you have the confidence to stand in your power and that you know how to set boundaries and speak up for yourself. And these are things that I think that a lot of people, at least I would say like for sure in like a Gen X boomer generation, it's like kind of foreign to us. We didn't learn it. It wasn't modeled by our parents. So anyway, if you didn't already watch it, I invite you to watch the video. That's the journey from first half of life living to second half of life living. Yes, we will go deeper into it when we're on these calls, but it just gives you a general overview of also why it's so important and what happens if we don't do it. What happens if we don't do this work? And so because we're here today to talk about fear, so I positioned this as talking about fear from the place of what's going on in the world today. But the truth of the matter is that is definitely something that's like in technicolor. Like we can see the ways that there's a lot of fear, whether we're feeling fear or other people are feeling fear or the media is stoking the flames of fear, whatever those are, we can see that there's a lot of fear energy. And sometimes fear that you can totally justify, right? There are things that are happening that are natural disasters that it's like, oh gosh, that would be so scary if that was me. And everybody has their opinions about what's going to happen in the future of the world and politics and global events and climate change and all these things. But that's like this, right? But on a day-to-day basis, most of us have a lot of things that we have fear around. And so wherever you are, it doesn't matter. It's okay. And I want to just start by acknowledging that fear is part of being a human. And just take a breath and be a little bit like, wow, yeah, like fear is something that we have to grapple with. And oftentimes what we do is we just get into resistance to fear. Like we don't want fear to exist. Like fear is bad and stoking the flames of fear is bad. And it's not, there's some truth to it. There's some truth to it. We don't have to live in as much fear as we do. And it's probably not helpful when people are like poking at our fear and trying to get us to be more afraid. And then try like doing it in these ways of maybe like fear of aging. So you better get this skin cream so that you don't get wrinkles, or fear of our children's futures. And so you better send them to the best school, even if you're going to go broke. So I would agree that it would be really nice to not have people stoking the flames all the time of our fear. But let's just say we don't have control over that. So wouldn't it be better if we could feel empowered around fear? If we could have the ability to be in the midst of fear and know that we have some tools and some ability to be able to be with ourselves in those times and not be so swept away by the fear, the things that people are stoking in us around fear, or even that we're stoking in our own minds, they're oftentimes not even based in reality, right? They might be based in like future possibilities, future catastrophizing. They might be based on us making up a story. Like maybe we're feeling fear because we were with a friend and we had a conversation. And when we left the conversation, we felt bad about something that we said. And we're now in fear that she's going to be upset with us. And we might spin out on that for 3 days before we have a conversation and find out she wasn't upset. And we just wasted a whole bunch of time making stuff up. And so fear, false evidence appearing real. Hear that one again. False evidence appearing real. And the way our brains work, they do have a little bit of a negativity bias, a drama bias, because the automatic parts of our brain, the primitive parts of our brain, they just want to keep us safe. That's it. So any hint of fear, a hint of fear, and our brain engages. Right. And it's, oh, this is evidence that it's a dangerous situation. We need to do something, mobilize, do something. And what do? We come up. All right. So I just want you to imagine this is what happens. We like come up. In fact, we do have two parts of our nervous system. One is the sympathetic nervous system and one is the parasympathetic nervous system. And when we're in fear and when we get, say, triggered by something or reacting to something, we engage this fight, flight, or freeze part of our brain, which we're not going to go into today. But if that's familiar to you, great. If it's not, maybe go look it up. It's an important thing to know. That's your sympathetic nervous system. And when you get stoked, your fear gets stoked, it's getting poked at you. That part, the sympathetic nervous system, actually is what gets engaged. And that is this kind of heightened place. You're like watching, what do I need to do? What do I need to fix? How does that other person need to stop doing what they're doing? We need to like change this over here and control this over here and right, like your whole body. You know what I'm talking about, fear, right? Imagine for you, what's fear feel like in your body? Like maybe it varies, right? At a low level, it's just this like tension in your shoulders and a sense of like maybe tension here in your jaw. Maybe it's just like when you're just feeling fear, like ever present fear, it just might be a little bit of a little tightness in your gut, shorter, shallower breath. Maybe it's a little bit of your heart racing. Maybe you feel a little shut down. Maybe you're noticing you're doing things a little bit on autopilot. You're watching more Netflix. Maybe you're eating more foods that are comforting or something like that. Maybe that's like a low level of it. And then maybe there's another one, which is like really feeling tension, stress. You got to get things done. You're just like the ruminating. Maybe it's like my kid, there's a problem and I'm so afraid that they're having issues in school and I'm so afraid for their future. And so maybe that one isn't like a triggered feeling, but it's this kind of like persistent worry. Always, what are we going to do about this? Talking about it, trying to come up with solutions, trying to figure it out. And then the other one, the most extreme is when we're literally triggered. Like maybe there's actually a dangerous situation, like you're in a dangerous situation in an alley and that's your fight, flight, or freeze. And it's like the one that your heart rate you start beating your heart. You could feel it. Your arms maybe become tingly. You become really focused and your brain feels weird. Your whole body feels different. And that's being emotionally triggered or even physically triggered, right? Like you're in an actual dangerous situation. But a lot of things that are happening these days might not literally be dangerous. Like you're actually safe in this moment, but it triggers that in us. The protection part of our brains are going a little bit awry. Now, I just want to say something. I know the people who are in the program know this, but anyone else, you may or may not know this, that this is called your ego defense mechanism. It's also called your fear response system. It's also called your survival brain. And it is this primal part in the back of your brain. And it's valuable. And it's the reason why you're here right now. If your ancestors didn't have a well-honed survival, ego protection, fear response system, they would have not survived. They just wouldn't have. They had to have that in order to be able to survive saber-toothed tigers or whatever other things were out there. Maybe not saber-toothed tigers. I don't really know. Don't ever ask me any of those things. Anything about timeline, history, geography, I'm probably going to get it wrong. But if you but that's because that's the most primitive part of our brain. It's the one that's the fastest. It's the one that comes online because, ultimately, as a human in a physical body, our survival really is paramount. If your physical body isn't here, you're dead. There's some reason why that's so powerful. And the truth of the matter is that we are more evolved beings than that. And so we really want to be able to be people who can be in this world and not get so consumed by it, which means we need to really understand that this fear mechanism has the power to control us. And it comes online so fast. So let's just talk about how fear can deceive us. Okay. Fear is this thing that we oftentimes think is about what's happening outside of us, right? That's scary. That's the scary thing. It's outside of us. And then when we have more people who agree with us, everyone agrees maybe that, I don't know, jumping out of an airplane with a parachute is scary. So then we all start to believe that thing is scary, right? Do you see what I'm saying? If we have a collective agreement of something that's scary, then we really attach to the thing is scary. But the reality is, it's actually not the thing. Fear is the thing that happens inside of us. It's our response to a stimulus. It doesn't mean that you want to do everything or that you should be able to do everything or that there's something wrong with you because you're afraid of something. Nothing like that. It's just recognizing and owning that your fear is actually more about the thing that happens to you in your body. Because that's the thing you have some control over. You really don't have control over the things that happen in the world, but you have a little bit of control over your own body response. And let me just tell you why this is so important. So the problem is that we oftentimes feel deceived by our fear, and we believe that maybe if we indulge in our fear, or AKA worry, AKA anxiety, something like that, like the reaction in our body, if we're focused on it and ruminating in our heads and feeling those feelings in our body, we may feel like we're actually doing something about it. Like it gives us a false sense that if I'm thinking about it and I'm worrying about it, then it's part of me trying to solve the problem. It's part of me trying to fix the problem. It also might make us feel like, look at us, we care. I remember when the kids were little, and I felt like there was this sense that if you worry, then you are a good mother. And if you don't worry, that makes you a bad mother. And I was like, I'm not going to ruin my whole life, steal my moments with my children. I'm going to learn how to not worry all the time because I know it steals me from my present moment. And I know it makes me not have good solutions to problems. And so I bucked against that. Now I can be a worrier. So I had to learn how to not worry so much. I don't want to sugarcoat any of this stuff. I also know that there's anxiety and worry that seem to just consume us, and it takes time to heal the underlying reasons why that's happening. So I am not trying to say to you, this is something that like after this hour, you should just decide to stop worrying. It's a journey. And I'm literally in the thick of some type of, in a transition in my life right now. And it has me feeling some kind of way. And I would call that way a little bit of anxiety right now. And so I'm so glad I have tools to be able to navigate this anxiety that I'm working through. And I know now that navigating anxiety is about turning toward it. And so I know that I have tools to be able to do it. But my brain tells me to fix the problem, solve the problem. Duh, this is it. Avoid. So, all right, but let's talk about what else it deceives us on. It also says that it makes us say that if I'm not feeling the fear, then am I accepting it? I don't want to talk about politics, but let's just say there's something political, like you're afraid of like the election. And it's a sense of, if I'm not feeling fear, then am I somehow saying that what's happening is okay, or that I don't care about the people who would be impacted, or something like that. And it's, wait a second here. Our fear does very little for anybody. Our anxiety does very little for anybody. It almost always steals joy. It almost always steals peace. It almost always takes us from the present moment, makes it so that we can't be with the people who we love, and literally just sucks the life out of us. That's mostly what it does. And so when we understand that, we can start to say, I actually do deserve to feel some level of peace, and my family, my loved ones deserve to have me be present with them. And by the way, like, I don't want to harm my body more, because we know chronic stress, fear, anxiety, all of the stuff, we know that it's not good for our bodies. The cortisol that's running through our bodies, the adrenaline, they're not good for us. And also, I don't know, have you ever really made a good decision when you're triggered or when you're really in a stressed situation? Maybe you made a good decision to run away when someone had a gun to you. No, not a gun to your head. That would be a bad idea. Don't run away. To run away if you're in a situation, like to run away from a dangerous situation. Okay, that's good. But you didn't even make that decision. Your body made that decision for you. But when it comes to making decisions, we know that's why people say things like sleep on it. Don't send that email right away. It's why we have to come back to a more balanced place where we're not just in the fear brain and we're in our prefrontal cortex. So the more we can do that, the better decisions we make, the more we can we can contribute better things to the world. And let's just go down like the path of, if you deeply desire peace in the world, where to start? We got to start with us and get peace in our own hearts. So you being peaceful makes the world a better place, makes your family a better place, makes your life a better life, makes you live longer. There are a lot of reasons why it's okay to choose peace, even in the midst of situations where you may not feel like you should. And I know some people will even say, what about the people who are in other countries and they're suffering, or people in our own country who are suffering? Who am I to just go on with my joyful, peaceful life when they're suffering? I look at that as, dude, you were given this life in that zip code, with your circumstances, your amount of money, your children, your trees around you, the house you live in, all those things. You weren't given the other life. Maybe another lifetime, if you believe in reincarnation, maybe in another lifetime, you lived that life. Maybe in a future lifetime, you're going to live that life, but not now. Live the life you're living right now and do the best you can to help in the best ways, but don't limit your life or dim your light or play small or believe that you can't have the life you want because other people don't have that life. Does anybody else feel some of that? Like you're not allowed to be happy, peaceful? Oh, and one of the regrets of the dying is that I didn't allow myself to be happy. Oh God, it's so hard. And I remember my therapist used to sometimes say to me, like, maybe the meaning of life is really just about being happy and just living and enjoying your life. And I'm like, God, that's really liberating. And if we're all interconnected beings, let's just say we are. Okay, we're all connected, which we are, right? You know what it's like to walk into a room with another person who's in a bad mood and you feel it. We have energetic connections. If you are connected to other people and you compare yourself to other people's lives and you start like being more like them or whatever, aren't we then negatively impacting them? Don't we positively impact people by just being the best us that we can possibly be, and then allowing that to ripple out like the butterfly across the world? The rising tide lifts all boats, that kind of thing, like being the peace that we desire in the world. Because most of the worry and the fear that we have just doesn't do anything. It just makes it worse. It makes everything worse. So let me just say, so we want to preserve our peace, which means that being centered, coming to this present moment. Let me ask you a question. Just check in with yourself right now. Look around your room, just check in. Are you in a dangerous situation? No. In this moment, you wouldn't even be here if you were, right? In this very moment, you're actually safe. And that's the only moment we have. And it's so cliche, but it's so true. We only have this moment. So be here now, in your body, in your being. Be here now and allow yourself to literally just be so joyful that this moment, it's not dangerous, it's safe, you're okay, you're breathing, no one is coming after you. And just allow that to be true. And if we lived every moment, it would be wonderful. But the problem is that we don't, right? Because we get caught up in thoughts and worries and future and all that stuff. That's why the work really is to become more and more present. That is the idea in the second half of our lives, is to become more and more present to this moment in our body, in our being. And it's usually our fears that steal that. Our fear steals it. And our fear can masquerade in lots of things, like our fear can just masquerade as planning for the future. It can masquerade as just sharing how I feel. It's like it can masquerade in a lot of things, but fear is pretty ever present for most of us. So then what I talked about is that it's not the outside thing, it's how we feel inside. But what we typically do is we go to all the things we can do to stop the thing from stop that scary thing from happening. Which I want to fend it off. And then if it's there, then I want to have good solutions to solve it. And understandably, like, especially when it has to do with like our children, our loved ones, we want to do everything to make sure that people don't get hurt or to our own lives. But what we're really trying to do usually is stop feeling discomfort. And so we go up in our heads and we go into solutions and into action when really the solution is to be with fear, to just be with fear. Have you ever heard of the saying, what we resist persists? So when we resist the fear, it just gets bigger. If we feed the fear, it gets bigger. If we indulge in the fear, it becomes more powerful. But there's a really sweet balance that we have to find between not indulging, but not cutting off from. It's like, where's that sweet spot? And that sweet spot is recognizing that underneath our reaction, and this might be new for some of you, is actually a little child part of you, a young part of you that was exposed to something as a child, many things as a child, who knows, that created fear in you. Something happened, it was scary, and no adult was there to help you to make sense of it, to comfort you, to walk you through it. And so it was overwhelming, and you learned that scary things make you feel a certain way. You don't want to feel that way. So you just learn to do what probably mommy and daddy did, which is avoid it or try to solve it or try to make you feel better, smooth you over. Girl, like, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, kind of thing, like all these like platitudes and stuff, when actually what needed to happen in that moment was you needed someone to pick you up, hold you, and be like, honey, I'm with you. I've got you. I'm a grown up and I know it feels scary for you, but I'm here. It's okay for you to cry. It's okay for you to feel whatever feelings you have, right? We really needed to be able to, what some people might call, metabolize the fear, right? For our parents to acknowledge it was scary. We probably had a scary situation. We're not here to gaslight our situations. If you had something that was scary, please acknowledge, I was scared. But we never really want to say, I'm scared, or maybe we do say we're scared, but do we really let ourselves feel it? Sometimes we just have to be like, I'm scared. I am scared. And I'm not going to try to solve it or fix it. I'm just going to say, that was scary, or this is scary, and allow ourselves to feel what's going on inside of ourselves instead of trying to stop it and manage it and control it. And it's time for us to really know how to come to those little parts of us instead of cutting off from them. Pretty much everything is rooted in our childhood. I didn't used to feel that way, but I have come to feel that way, like that. Pretty much everything is. And so when you go to the place of trying to solve the problem now, you're almost always going to miss out on so much. So I don't think that I'm not trying to say that there aren't things that need to be done in the present situation. Let's just say you have a child who's going through something difficult. It's not to say that there isn't something that needs to be done to solve that problem or address the problem. But if we can go to ourselves either concurrently or first and go, wait a second, like what's going on with me? What are my feelings around this? What's my fear around this thing? Then we deal, and then we hold, aka reparent, parent ourselves, give ourselves the things we needed when we were little. We get to move through that and maybe heal ourselves and maybe have access to more adult solutions rather than a lot of times what we're doing is just reacting to the situation from, frankly, our child parts, our wounded child parts, our fear parts. So what I thought we would do, I'm debating right now. I'm feeling like I want to actually give you like an experiential moment with this. And so why don't we do that? And then maybe if we have time, I'll tell you about the importance of worrying fully. Maybe before we end, I'll tell you that. But so why don't we just do this? We're not going to take a ton of time, but I want you to take a moment and you can either keep your eyes open, close your eyes, or drop your gaze, whatever feels most comfortable. Sometimes closing your eyes can actually make you feel a little unsafe, and it's okay if you have a lot of fear in your body to just drop your gaze so that you're looking down a little bit, just not distracted by us, or even just keep your eyes open. And what I want you to do, if you're willing, and it may not work because it doesn't always work on command, but either notice fear already in your body or bring up something a little scary. Something that is right there that feels a little scary for you. A little bit of worry is there. And just notice your breath, but notice more than that what it feels like in your body. And I'm just going to give you 10, 15 seconds to see if you can conjure that up. And if you're having a hard time conjuring something up, then just try to go to a time when you felt fear and just see if you can access what those feelings are in your body. And if it's tension in your neck or clenching your jaw, your heart's racing a little bit, your stomach feels tied up in knots, tightness in your head. So I'm going to give you a few moments to just feel into that and do the best you can to stay with it. Follow the sensations rather than trying to pop out and escape them. Your brain may do that. And now I talked before about the sympathetic nervous system, which is what you might be feeling right now. There's another one called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is like a parachute. I want you to think about that. And it's just guiding you down, down into the ground, grounding you. And it's the one that calms you and brings you back to homeostasis. And the way we do that is using an elongated out breath. So I'm just going to have you breathe in regular and exhale, imagining you're floating down like with a parachute to the ground. And nice long out breath. So it would be like just a regular breath in and then a long breath out of like maybe 8 counts, possibly. And while you do it, I want you to imagine your body just softening a little bit. Wherever those places are of tension, maybe holding your shoulders tight or gripping or your jaw, your stomach. See if you can soften those. Imagine it's almost like gravity takes hold and everything kind of softens and drops a little. Or imagining you're lying on a foam bed, Tempur-Pedic or whatever, and as you lie on it, it holds you a little. Each exhale. Maybe you even can notice your heart softening a little. And now I want you to take your hand and put it on your heart. If the heart doesn't feel right, put it on your belly, put it on your cheeks. But I want you to imagine your hand is there, giving you comfort and peace. We are not here to make fear go away or make anxiety go away. In fact, what we really want to do is just allow it to be there, but come in using our hand as almost like a parent energy, the parent coming in and giving you what you really need in this moment, which is, I'm here. I'm with you. I know you feel scared right now. You're not alone. Maybe using the breath alongside of it. And noticing how you feel. Might bring up more fear. You might feel softer, might feel more relaxed, more peaceful, or you might not at all. And there's nothing wrong. But I'm going to give you a few moments to just have your hand on your heart, your belly, your cheeks, wherever you want to put your hand. And just be with yourself, sharing love and care and compassion for the young parts of you that felt scared and didn't get the love and care and attention you maybe needed in those moments. And one more moment, I want you to take another breath, a nice long exhale, keeping your hand wherever it is. And one more time, I'm here. I'm with you. I've got you. We're in this together. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And if you feel like it, tell me in the chat what that was like for you. Maybe what you felt like in the beginning, and then just how you feel now, and anything else you want to share about it. And if you don't feel like sharing, it's okay too. Or if you want to share one word. And just for the record, there's no right answer ever, because the right answer is whatever it is that's coming up to be shared. Because the truth is that I can't know your experience, right? I can only know how to guide you through an experience, and then you get to have your experience. And then your experience actually is what allows you to be able to find more of yourself. Oh, I'm so glad, Amy, that it felt calming after the fear you were feeling. Yes. I know. Isn't it so nice to have a midday break with a breath and a little connection to ourselves? Thank you, Judy. You felt very comforted. You were feeling tightness in your chest, hands, and jaw, thinking about fear initially. And the long out breath is always effective at calming my nervous system. Hand to heart is also powerful. And you felt held. Yeah. And it's really amazing because the elongated out breath There are other ones, and I'm happy to teach you more 4-7-8 breath and box breathing and all these other things. But man, you just tune into an elongated out breath and you notice people, right? You notice someone who's really stressed. What do? They'll be like breathing out. And because we know it, we actually know it naturally, but we often can even have a little rebellion. Like, I'd rather just stay in my fear. There's a weird thing that can happen to us where I have had people tell me, like, I can't, I'm like almost unable to breathe. Like, I know I should breathe in this moment, but I'm having an inner battle. I don't want to breathe because there's a way that sometimes we're almost addicted to the adrenaline and the cortisol and the energy that fear brings. And so we have to recognize that sometimes there's a little bit of this compulsion to stay in it. And it requires some intentionality to choose to breathe and to center ourselves a little bit. And Sandy, for you, fear felt like pain throughout your body. My skin hurt. And it felt good to hold my face in my hands. Yes. Huh. I felt the fear worry in my body as tightness in my chest and frenetic monkey mind. Yep. 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 I didn't even mention that, but frenetic monkey mind totally keeping us up there. Do more, think more, figure it out, or fend it off, or what do I need to do to feel better? And it's almost about trying to make those sensations go away. But notice when we went into the sensations, it really wasn't even probably as scary as it maybe seemed to be in your mind. We learn as children to avoid feeling our feelings and being with big sensations in our body because we often didn't have anybody there to help us. So we were just little and they just felt so overwhelming and shocking. But you're adults. Yay. So we could do it. Okay, so let me just say to you, all the things that we just did in an ideal world, if you're not used to practicing them, you would practice them proactively when you're at lower levels of fear or anxiety, maybe when you're even feeling really good. You're driving down the street and you're like, I'm having such a good day. It's a great time to just practice your long elongated out breath, maybe putting your hand on your heart and just being like, I'm with you on this great day. And because what happens is as we practice it, in our regular, just day-to-day life, it'll be more automatic and more available to you in a time of actual stress or anxiety. And let me just point out what we did here. So in first half of life living, we learned to be externally oriented. We learned to be moving toward goals, doing what our programming says we're supposed to do, like partnering up, getting houses, making money, having babies. And it's all external and it's creating our foundation for our lives. It's really answering the question, what does life or the world want from me? But when we've done that and we get to a certain baseline of our needs being met, then we really strive toward this self-actualization, self-realization, or soul-led living. And it's really, what does my soul want for me? Not from me, for me. And we lean into softening, being more present. It's like we have some level of physical safety that we can start to lean into, connecting to ourselves. And we realize, dang, I wish I knew how to connect to myself all that time. I wish I knew. And I think we will get there. I think we're moving toward like more and more. I think we're in a very wobbly time with a tremendous amount of mental illness and emotional dis-ease right now because we're going through this period of learning how to be able to do this. But I think we're going to start teaching our children these things and future generations, and they're going to know how to do this stuff and how to stay connected to themselves more and how to become their own source of validation and love and approval. Or maybe not, because maybe it's just the way that you have to do it. You have to build up an ego structure first so that you can then have the ability to move on. Maslow and Carl Jung and all these people, they were years ago, and we haven't really evolved that much since then. I guess the beauty is here we are now. Here we are. We're waking up now to it. I want to give a chance for you guys to be able to share, but I did promise you I would talk about how to worry fully. Have you ever heard somebody say something like, stop scaring yourself with your thoughts? We like literally have all these thoughts. So a thing happens and then we attach all these thoughts to it. oh my God, it's the future catastrophizing. This is going to happen, or this did happen. And we have all these thoughts, and we literally are scaring ourselves with our thoughts. They're not even real. This isn't even real life. Similar thing, though, is because we do that, we never really go all the way down the path. So I know I'm a little bit weird because I do this stuff. I do recognize it as an odd thing, but it is actually a really helpful thing. So, like, when everything happened that was happening in North Carolina, with the floods and the destruction and people living like in horrible conditions, I went down the path of immediately, I was just like, oh my God, what if something like that happened? That would be awful. It's so scary. How would we do that? And my hyper vigilant brain wanted to go into, we should probably have this in our safety, or not, like this box and this bin, and we should, maybe we need to do this and do that. But I realized that really, I just needed to know, would I be okay if it got that bad? So could you worry all the way through? Could you put yourself in the situation? Like, my brother-in-law lives there, so we know some of the details of what's happening. And could you put yourself into this situation and actually just go like down the path of it happens and you're there? Are you going to be okay? Like, even with your kids, you're worried that they're going to be, something's going to happen to them, and play it out. Let's just say the kids rock bottom, worst case scenario, awful. Can you survive? Are you going to be okay? And for the most part, look back in history at all the people who have survived horrible things. We are a resilient species. We seem to make it through stuff. And I do watch some of these things and go, I don't want to have to deal with that. But would I? Could I? I think I could. Or you get illness or something. Can you survive? I sometimes get worried that I'm like the worst patient. Everything cringes me out. And I'm like, oh my God, if I ever had something that like they were going to have to, I don't know, do really gross things to me, I think I'd rather die. And I'm like, but Deb, I know I'll be okay. And I worry all the way through. Like, I survived really awful things during childbirth and I was okay. So going to like where you worry all the way to the end, but you also go back and you look at all the times you've done hard things. And remind yourself, you don't have to have a plan for everything. You don't have to preemptively know what's going to happen for everything. I know uncertainty is uncomfortable, but we don't have control over most everything in the future. And it's better to preserve your peace in the now.